are, right? But it's not like we're not bound by these physical limitations of time and space, our body. It's just a state of complete fulfillment, right? Complete ecstasy, complete the highest epitome of existence is what we're directed to. So there may be questions about, well, can you feel? Well, yeah, right? So we're going to have our bodies with us eventually, and when that happens, who knows? Maybe it's because we're talking about things outside of time and space. Is that instantaneous? Is there a certain amount of like when we talk about the second coming? Well, in heaven, that's already happened or is happening, right? So, all right, great. Maybe we have our bodies right away. What does our body look like? I don't know.
Is there ice cream?
Is there ice cream? Or at least the fulfillment of ice cream. Yeah, of course, right? So no, yeah, I mean, can you still like eat? And one would imagine because you have a body in heaven. So it's one of these things where it's kind of hard to define just because we don't exactly know. We don't have that experiential means, and we don't have that experience. We have experiences of like perfections, right? And there's maybe something like that, but it's completely fulfilling and never ends. So, yeah, I mean that's really probably the best thing we can say. It's just a state of existence. Heaven is a state of existence where you're with God in complete fulfillment, right? Hell is existence where you're farthest away from God, right? And well, purgatory, that's a temporary existence, but we don't really know exactly what it's like until it's come back to gold. Right.
You want to go next? But I got one more question.
No, go ahead.
I was talking to my friend David Sick. This was a man who I work with, Dr. Neil Sloan, and he told me, "Would you help this guy write these imagery sequences?" So I helped him. It was January 2020, and in the course of that, the whole world came to an end, or at least that's what we thought.
Yeah.
And he ended up becoming my very best friend.
Cool.
He lives in England.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks ago, he asked me a question. He went to an ashram.
Oh yeah.
Like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like no, but I told him I get it. I
Sure.
Eastern religion. I
Yeah.
get it. They're all fascinated about the new. Well, he was talking to somebody. One of his questions was, and he asked his questions like, "Who are you?" So this other guy at the ashram, and then he says, "Well, I'm John." He said, "I didn't ask you what your name was. Who are you?" "Well, I'm a plumber." "I didn't ask you what you did for a living. Who are you?"
Yeah.
So he asked me this question, and I didn't tell me all this before, and I said, I told him I'm nothing. Now, here's the thing. I don't mean that I'm worth nothing.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm
Right.
nothing.
Right.
So when like later on as you talk, I said, when you first asked me this, the thing that came up to me was like in mathematics, you know what an empty set is? It's the braces with nothing in it.
Yep.
I'm the braces. Yep. And that everything that's in there, God gave me.
Sure.
Or, it came through life.
Right.
Or I lost some stuff out in there.
Sure.
But ultimately, in the end, all this stuff's going to go away.
Right.
And then I'm just going to be that. So I'm just, yeah. I mean, so what is that? Is that true? Is that what is that? Like, so
Yeah.
you take away my body, take away all this other stuff,
Well,
all
so
the memories.
you won't if you have your body taken away.
Oh yeah.
What you have is a glorified body, right? So I mean, but if someone were to ask me that question, right?
Yes.
Who am I?
Who are
My first question would be, I'm a beloved son of God, because that's natural. That's my identity as a baptized Christian. I have an imprint on my soul that doesn't go away. That's going to be there forever. That identifies me as that. I can never lose that mark, no matter what I do, or what with, or how I might offend. That's always going to be there. I would say then maybe my next my next identity would be I'm a loyal son of the church. Because through my confirmation, I begin another mark that identifies me for all eternity as that. And my most proximate identity would be a priest of God. Because that's who I am.
now, those are things that are in the braces, right? Or
I will see,
marked.
that's the thing. I think that transcends even the braces. Right? Because we're talking about something, These are things that are eternal, right? Because my
Okay.
soul comes from God. That's never going to die. That is of God. And he has marked me with these identities that transcend everything that exists here.
So when it is over, not to fight. You
Yeah,
think
when it's
about
all said and done, I mean, I won't have my car. I won't have,
No, you're-
yeah, I mean, all
all
these,
this is gonna go
yeah,
away.
all this stuff's not going to be there anymore. But I won't need it because it's been. So you talk about the empty braces. My thought is it'd be the fullness of those braces. It would explode those braces beyond what those braces actually
It's
are.
part of the class.
Yeah,
You know, it's an ontological class.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, it's so that's good. That's right.
Yeah.
So that these marks. So when you say that you get this mark of baptism, does that work retroactively? Because your soul has existed from the beginning, correct?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, right.
Your soul existed from
Well, okay,
is that true?
maybe.
We don't know.
What we can say is, well, let's put it this way: God had you in mind for all eternity. Right. Now, your actual existence you're actually coming into being would have happened at the moment of your conception. Right. So the soul would have been infused with your body at that moment. Now, could your soul exist before? Maybe. Does it exist after? Of course it does. Right. So how God creates and when God creates, that again is kind of a contradictory question because he's outside time and space. I don't know. Right.
So to me,
Well,
it doesn't matter.
Right.
Conception is your incarnation.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
You're
so
incarnate soul at that point.
we're maybe we're just spirits hanging around waiting for our change.
Maybe,
No.
maybe. I mean, but the fact of the matter, if you exist, the fact you exist just shows that God loves
Well,
Yes.
Barron it was one of his Sunday sermons, and the name of it was, it really stuck with me. You were loved into existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loved into existence.
Right.
And I know my daddy felt that way about me. I know my parents felt that
Yeah.
way about me, but the fact that I came to them of that love. It's something when you were talking about that moment in the consecration, maybe when you were newer at this. I mean, did you ever stop right in your tracks and think,
Oh, to me,
what am I doing?
there
with
is
this
there
guy?
is there a day goes by when I'm celebrating the mass, where at that moment I'm not completely cognizant of what's happening and my unworthiness in it.
Yeah,
Not
I
a
mean,
day goes by where I feels like I'm not this person. I'm not the guy for this.
But he gave you the license.
He did. He gave me the
But-
capacity to do it.
I mean, just that, because I will say, honestly, that every once in a while, and this would be kind of the opposite of that, I think, really, how can all this be?
I think it's kind of we were talking about too much, right? Like, yeah, how can this
Yeah.
all be true? And I think the easiest answer to get, which may not be the most fulfilling, is because he says so.
Well, and that's what I think,
Yeah.
because I have a cousin who is a Bible thumping
Mhm.
atheist,
Mhm.
the worst kind.
Right, yeah, right.
And I said, Lou, you know what that says to me? You're not finished. Or you'd be indifferent.
That's true.
You'd
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
funerals,
right.
you'd go to baptism.
Well, that should like too hot, too hot or too cold, but don't leave lukewarm, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
there
would
you go.
be okay with whatever anybody wanted to be, like his sister, who was
Right.
very religious.
Right.
But, you know, it's always, well, you can't prove it. I said, that doesn't mean it can't be proved. That
Well,
means we
here's-
can't
Here's
prove
my
it.
answer to that. You can't disprove it either. So I mean that's the whole thing about this, is
Yeah.
that you're trying to apply materialistic, empirical limitations on something that's eternal. But that doesn't work.
I
You can't do that.
I work with mathematics, and so there's a lot of stuff that can't
Exactly.
there's gaps in logic that you can't cross. But the problem with the existing human, that it's so much more complex.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, the whole AI thing. You know, I deal a lot with this whole question, in, you know, ACI and all that. We don't even know what consciousness is, so how are we,
Right.
you know, so we're making, it's like a kid who has an idea of how a tractor is made. And so he goes ahead and starts to build a tractor. Is that tractor gonna work? Probably not.
Well, yeah, right.
Sounds a
Well,
bit like
yeah,
how
yeah,
it might.
Anyone that's ever designed anything will tell you that, you know, you do the best you can with the gifts you're given. And
Maybe
there's
it
no,
won't.
maybe it will, maybe it won't. I mean, you hope it
No.
does, right? I
We
mean,
call it a practice,
exactly, and it's based on sound principles typically, but even principles are not.
and the equations are
Yeah,
guidelines. They're-
right.
Because there's so much that can be, the model is simplified, it can never
Right.
be.
You make assumptions,
Well-
you make applications, and you hope your assumptions are correct, at least conservative enough that it's going to cost them work. But
Yes.
you don't
Well,
really
and
know
you
for
were
sure,
in,
right?
aerodynamics? Yeah, well, how does a bee fly? That's impossible aerodynamically,
True.
but they don't know.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you see, and I think that just goes to show, like the bee example is a good one, because that just shows there has to be a God that exists for that to happen.
Yeah, they can't fly.
A perfect designer who designed this bee in the way he did, that doesn't make any logical sense to happen.
Well, maybe that is the example we're given. I haven't told you everything.
Oh, for sure, yeah, that's very true. I think, and I think that's another thing. In humility, we as human beings have to kind of approach that and say, I'm more than willing to say I don't know everything.
So you have to say.
I have to say that.
It's
Yeah.
not the person says.
That's right. Or a wise person says that, for sure.
Right.
Right.
When you're out of gas, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't try to make it up. As well.
Exactly.
You have to
Exactly.
say, I don't.
And I think that's what's kind of funny is I talked to some people who come through RCA, and a few people this past year. I think what kind of pushed them over the line was the humility the church takes in her knowledge, because she's open to certain things. Like, hey, look, you know, we're not opposed to Darwinism, but if you want to hold it that God made the world in 7 days, okay. I can't say otherwise. Right?
Some things we won't.
Exactly.
Just
Now,
the evidence for that might be lost.
right, and I think that's the other thing too. There's also a trust that these things will be revealed when we're with them. Right. I think that's one thing that kind of I think
get the
drives a lot of
answers.
people. Hey, I mean, wouldn't it be so amazing to sit down and with Jesus and be like, these 12, why? What was that all about?
Yeah.
What were you thinking of?
But actually, it's a very good comfort for me to see people.
Exactly.
Because he always is like, oh no, I'll get you a lamp. We're gonna make little tents.
And
for each one of you."
see-
And he's like, and while
and
he's
see,
still
like-
talking, this is my son. Yeah.
Isn't that the answer? That might be the answer. Well, I figure if these 12 can do it, anyone can.
I would think,
I'm in charge.
Right, I know.
I would
Right.
think that's it. I mean, he could have gotten a bunch of Marys.
Yep.
He could have made 12 Marys. Of course, not women. But,
Well, Mary was.
Mary was a woman. Yeah.
yeah. And they only let
No,
that slide
but
once.
that
But
point though, like, hey, what's the deal with the male priesthood? What was that all? Why'd you do that? No.
oh, you can do that.
What's that?
I'm happy to do that someday. But I'm still not over with the historical Adam. We've got to revisit that. I drove away with about 1 million questions on that. But
Historical horse. Okay, what do you mean, like how? Okay, but I think we kind of addressed that in some way with the Darwinism, right? Yeah.
well, yeah, we can do that some other day. But
Okay.
one thing that what did you have? Oh,
Just
okay.
here for more.
Well, I spent remember the last time we were here and you and I were leaving Lance?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll see you in the morning. And you said, well, unless I see you first,
Right.
you almost did.
Oh yeah.
I went home and I went to bed and I was in bed for most of 2 weeks.
Oh no.
And then after that, I couldn't even get up. I couldn't even go and I had a pitcher of water that I shared with my cat. You know, she really wants to go to heaven. And she was planning on going with me if I left early. But I had COVID eventually, I guess I was going into it.
Okay.
But then I was, critically dehydrated. And I had an acute kidney injury because of it.
Oh,
So I called the nurse with my last breath last Friday, and she said, "You've got to go to urgent care." So I did, and they put me in St. Mary's. So I was there like 24
why
hours.
didn't you call us?
All I wanted to do was sleep.
Okay,
And, but,
well,
you know, they told me this is very reversible.
okay,
And then as I'm leaving there, I might have missed my chance.
no, I mean, yeah.
I'm all
so-
about this apostolic
Well, no,
absolute,
no,
or apostolic part.
you can still call us and just get the anointing. Just, I mean, so here the apostolic part is
Yeah.
good, but receiving the grace of the sacraments is good too.
Well, they actually didn't. They decided to keep me because they wanted to give me one more bolus. They call it
Okay.
juice.
Okay.
But you know, once I got in there, I was safe.
Oh.
But oh, he almost jinxed me because I just wanted to sleep. I said, I was saying to you, I almost slept my way into eternity because I sure didn't want her to say. I thought she was going to say, "Well, you're better now."
Yeah.
No. But I thought, next time I'm in that hospital, I'm gonna call you before I'm.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I just, you know, they said I was safe, but
Okay.
anyway,
Well, still, I mean,
I thought of
we're
those
in the
last
hospital. It's probably
words.
always good to call us. We'll help them, sure.
well, anyway, it was just dehydration. I mean,
Okay.
that will kill you.
Well, I'm glad you're better now.
Yeah, and
Okay.
there was a miracle that I almost missed out on. I had been coming 5:30 mass, no matter what I had to do. Even when I had to come from book club, I wanted to make 5:30 mass. Because there's a couple who come, and he would always be kind of hunched over, and it's Mary Jo and Don. And so if I wasn't behind him anymore in handicap, I got those miracle cortisone injections. I would always go over there and say, you know, "Peace be with you, you old goat,"
Okay.
you know. And we talk about offering it up and all that. And well, the last time I saw her, she said Don is in intensive care. He's got pneumonia and he's delirious, pulling on the oxygen and everything. And then she left, and I didn't get a phone.
Oh,
And so every Sunday I was coming,
right.
and I even looked in the obituaries. I don't know their last name.
Oh,
So I looked for Donalds with a wife named Mary Jo.
okay.
But anyway, so I'm at 5:30 mass this weekend, 2 days ago.
Yep.
And I just kind of turn this way a little, and I get a glimpse of Mary Jo crying. So I don't know what I'm gonna hear.
Oh,
And then, you know, we did the sign of peace,
Yeah.
and then I rushed to her, and the first thing she said to me is, "He's alive."
oh, good. Good.
Oh,
That 5:30 was kind of interesting. When we started, the such thing was only 15 people there.
oh,
But
really?
by the time we got through the glory, it was like 70. So quite a turnout there. With the rain and everything, Father's Day, I didn't think it was gonna be that big of a turnout, but the rest of the country pretty.
Yeah, you usually go to 5:30 with family, don't you? On
Yeah,
Sunday?
but what happens sometimes is that one of the kids, like, we try to go with the kids. Like, we're trying to stress that we go together. Like, they want to come by themselves, which is okay. I said, listen, you know, you just need to go.
Yeah.
But if, you know, my daughter needs to go because of some kind of obligation she got on Sunday, and then my son needs to go on Sunday, then I'll go with my son. So that usually you'll see my wife and my daughter. Sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
But we went on, I think we went 9 o'clock or something odd.
Yeah.
I think it was 11.
You're right.
Yeah, because they just I think they stay up there, whatever it is, like my son's staying up there. He's there now. I'll make him. Yeah, but that's the reason why. Normally, that's the one we like to go to that one. That used to be the kids' mix, or the
Yeah,
youth
youth
mix.
match, yeah. Which it may be again. I mean, so we have been discussing the interim mass schedule, which should be implemented in July probably, and we're looking to go from 8 parish mass into both parishes to 5. So what that's going to look like is probably, we haven't got this solidified, but probably be at 4:30 over at Rayfield on Saturday, 6:30 a.m. Sunday here, 8 o'clock at Rayfield, 10 o'clock a.m. here, then 5:30. So that's probably what's going the schedule's going to look like, at least for the interim. Well, right now the going rate is keep it the same. Now, I don't know if that's going to work, just because the big factor here is Father Ritter. If he's got something at a high school or college or whatever during the day, he might be able to do the 6 o'clock mass, but maybe that's about it. And I don't know if you'd want to do the 6 o'clock mass every day. That would be kind of, burdensome. So I was thinking more of, this is my thought. Keep the 6 here, the 7 there, and then do maybe 1 8 o'clock here for the school children, 1 8 o'clock there for the school. That's my thought. Or maybe
What
even
about
2.
the old lady?
6 o'clock or 7. So good, right? Yeah, that's kind of the thought about that. So I don't know. I think Monsignor Simon wants to reduce his workload, which I don't blame him. So we're gonna have to see how that all gonna work out. I'm just meeting with Father Molini next week to talk about what he wants me to do. So maybe I have a more solidified understanding by then. So we'll see.
Now, why 6 and 7? Just for the people who actually go to work?
So
and
the 6 is
not
where the people go to work. The 7 over there seems to be. So they only have an 8 o'clock mass during the school year over there.
Oh, okay.
And so the thought of there is why change it for them? Just keep 7, that should work. The only reason they have the 8 o'clock is for the school kids. And that could work. Now they go, because over there they go to mass every day.
Oh, neat.
They don't have a school mass every day. I mean, all the kids go to mass every day, but usually be like, they have like adults do the readings and everything, but Friday is the all school mass over there with the kids do. Which I don't think is a bad way.
We did it when
Yeah.
I was in primary at Holy Garden Age. We
Yeah.
started.
I think that's viable. It's just the problem is, do we have,
Well, they had lots of free.
right? I mean, so like right now, one thing they mentioned on the meeting on the 22nd was if you were to regularly celebrate more than 2 masses a day, technically that permission is control. Right. That was a one-off, that's one thing. But if you're always doing that, Rome has to give that. So we're trying to keep it to 2 a day minimum for each priest. And so let's say if I have, let's say I do the 6 and I do the 8 over there, then I have a regalia mass. Right? Oh well, that's gonna be rough. Usually it's about twice a month.
What is the regalia man?
So usually priests of help with the Curia in some way or another. They have 11:45 mass over there. Now that may change though too, because the Curia is being reformed. Right. So
Well, you
don't
do
know.
your Latin mass. Is that the
well, that's just so
an
I do that. I do that.
your passion?
That's
No, I'm
not a
serious,
yeah,
though.
that's not a regular scheduled mass, because it's usually if I don't have a mass scheduled for the week,
Oh,
I'll do one.
okay.
So like last week I didn't have any masses scheduled for the week for me.
Oh, at all?
I didn't have a parish mass that week. So this
Okay.
usually rotate through the 3 of us.
Yeah.
One will take 6, one will take 8, then one has the week off for that part. And usually you can find masses anyway, but I still celebrate mass every day.
Now, where do you celebrate it? celebrated.
in the sacristy. Yeah, if I'm alone, yeah. But if I have a week off, I'll usually schedule a Latin mass, so people can keep up on that.
Yeah.
So, the next one.
Well,
probably
I
in July.
listened to it
Yeah.
on my deathbed.
Oh, good. What a mess.
I did, look up mass every morning.
Oh, good, yeah.
And I kept up with my rosary and my divine mercy.
Well, the
Catholic.
struggle is sometimes if there's certain priests that has 8 o'clock mass, he doesn't have a tendency to scream. Just because he doesn't, I don't think you.
I
can
know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard to get the camera going.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
So, yeah.
Exactly.
So there's a week I think we didn't have, I think last week we didn't have any.
Now, what is the button it seems that Monsignor Simon presses before the very end of mass? Because that doesn't turn off the screen. Seems to be on the altar.
Yeah, he gets a lapel microphone up there so people can hear him. from the altar.
Oh, okay,
So you can
all
turn it
right,
on and off
okay.
there, yeah.
okay.
I usually keep it on my lapel. He
Yeah.
just keeps it up there. And off.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, different way to do it.
So there would be.
That's kind of what looks like we're doing. Maybe because the other thing too is, and this may be reduced why, because right now it's an interim schedule. The new, like the final schedule won't come up until like December. So maybe the thought right now is, since we have to implement this by August 1st, and really the schooling starts like 2 weeks later. So why not just start it now, and then through the first half of the school year, it'll be in place. And then there may be a new final schedule coming out like in December, January. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
You're
Um,
gonna have some very sleepy rosary ladies.
If they kept coming to 6,
No, 7. Oh, we
Oh.
are gonna have a 7. Or
7 over
maybe
there,
not.
7
All right,
over
well,
there.
maybe you won't have all the rosary ladies.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but like I said, right now we're supposed to 7, 8 for both places. So I don't know though. That hasn't been finalized.
Well, no, this is a concern of mine. With, bad knees, bad arms. My goal is to end up at Our Lady of Life.
Mm.
The reason being, I want to go to mass
Sure.
every day if they have to put me in a laundry
Sure.
cart.
Yeah,
Take me.
sure.
Who's doing all of these masses? They have it every day, I think.
Yeah, they have
So
retired priests that live there. They'll come and do it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking.
Usually that's how it works. I mean, Regina Claire is just right there.
Because my sister-in-law's mom is in Laclede Grove, which is
Oh, sure.
Lutheran.
Yep.
My mom used to be in there for rehab, and I'm not sure of this, but somebody told me they have
They've got
mass
their best, yeah.
on Thursday.
That's probably right. I think usually it's they have someone from Curie of ours come, because it's right across the street.
Yeah, I
They
really
follow
want to go every
birds.
day though.
Yeah,
So,
but Curie
I
of
wonder
ours
what
is
it's gonna be like.
probably going away
oh,
because they're being folded into St. Michael,
yeah.
and there's a big question about if that church is going to be.
But they would have to have a mass at every nursing home once a week, wouldn't they? Oh my goodness. Michael, you're gonna have to come and pick me up and take me to mass when I get old. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I will
wonder.
say, like, so when we used to have mass over at the Geberg house, we got about 15 and 20 before COVID. Then they closed down. We haven't gotten back to charter. I think it's still charter. I don't know what the name they call it now.
What's the charge?
It's over on Hampton. I'm sorry, Chippewa. Where Watson, like right there next to the building. They call it out. Used to be like a
Oh,
medical.
yeah,
but
yeah.
we were doing that. We were there every Thursday before the pandemic, and there's about 30 people came back.
Well, I would imagine employees come too. don't they?
No,
Really?
not really. No, I mean most of it's residents. At least
Well, maybe it
here.
was on Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, my mom used to like to go to Deaconess on Sunday or St. Mary's. I don't know why. But that was on Sunday, and so nurses,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. My sister, she works at Barnes. They just finally got a chaplain over there, so she likes going to the mass right there because it's, they're just there. Got to work all day. That's
Yeah.
usually the only time she has to get to that. Yeah, I think most hospitals tend to do that, but But see, that's a factor too, because the thought behind all this is maybe I want to pay for being chaplains. And so I will say I've been contacted to help be a chaplain over at the Burn, the high school. Now I'm kind of leery about that because I don't know what my responsibilities are yet here.
Yeah.
So I'm more than willing to help out over there and celebrate mass and think that's fine. But to actually take the title of chaplain, I don't know if I want to do that right now until I find out what's going on.
This is not a time to take on the
Yeah,
responsibility.
and
because
when-
he's-
Yeah, right.
I went to DeBerg, there were priests, there were teachers.
Yeah, right.
And so maybe they just don't have that many.
There's no longer priests there, teachers over there though. As a matter of fact, right now, the chaplain they have over there is Father Aaron Noel, who's the pastor over at IHM, but he also is on the tribunal, so he already has 2 other jobs.
No.
I have here, and also I'm on the respect. I support the Respect Life Hospital. That's another job I have. It's not I don't get paid for it, but that's part of my repertoire. To be a chaplain though is sort of like that's also like a paid position. So a chaplain, so basically the role of the chaplain is to take care of a chapel, and the definition of a chapel is a church that's reserved for a particular order or particular. So, for instance, at the seminary, right, the St. Joseph Chapel, because celebration of mass and the sacraments only happen for the seminarians there, typically, right? I mean, they may open it, but for the most part, they open their doors to the public for mass there. In the same way, a chaplain at a high school would be, in effect, the pastor of that high school. So you're responsible for all the sacramental needs, even some of the more maybe like counseling needs. So it's kind of a broad definition, right? So I'm not opposed, just I don't know if I can right now. And you know, it's funny when I have found that usually, and I probably should have known this even from my life before priest. If they give you a time frame, you probably want to quadruple that. So they
Of how long you have
yeah,
it.
'cause they told me when I took on the RLA, it would only be like maybe 2 hours a month.
What is RLA?
Respect Life Possible.
Oh,
It is a-
It turns out to be like a week, a month, right? I mean, with everything, I kind of okay, do this, like oh, okay,
Bombs on.
exactly. So I imagine it's gonna be the same thing with chaplains. Oh yeah, we only need like 3 days a week. Okay. Right, or 2 days a week. Okay.
but you're so close.
True.
Could you do this?
Well, I mean, also now they'll be in my boundary.
Oh.
Technically,
okay,
they're in
yeah.
Rayfield's boundary,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So
That's very important. Yeah.
now they will be, right?
Borders.
The burger, the boundary.
So are all the priests gonna live here? And nobody, I guess they have a rectory over there. You don't know.
They have a record over there, but I mean, again, that's a father leading question. I don't know. I mean, we can't. Let's put it this way: we can't all fit over there because they don't have enough room.
You have enough room here.
Right. So if we want to live together, if Father Molina wants to live together, the only option is live here.
Do you do your own cook?
We don't have to live here.
So you take turns?
No.
Who cooks?
Usually Monsignor Chandler cooks if he does cook, but like also I kind of fend for myself. I can prepare my own stuff for the most part. I'm not a chef, but like
Crack
I-
lunch.
I lived a life before I came, so I mean I can boil water and make breakfast or whatever. But yeah, I know what I'm doing. I mean, yeah. I mean, some people go to open funeral to help out over there.
So maybe you'd have some people there and some here.
I don't know. I mean,
'Cause you're
I don't
getting
know. I
another
mean,
person's coming.
well, Father Ritter. So I mean, so there's a lot of different possibilities. I mean, for all you know, Father Lee may come in here and say, you know what, Mark, I want you to go over to Rayfields and stay there and take care of Rayfields. Or he might say, I'm going to Rayfields, you stay here and take care of Gabriel. Or he might say, you know, Father Ritter, why don't you go and live over there? You can use that rector over there as the new Colby house for discernment of guys coming into seminaries. Or maybe, you know what, how about we just all live together and we'll use that as the office space? Or vice versa. I don't, there's a lot, I don't know.
Close down one building.
Could be,
Don't have to take care of.
could be, but I mean, one thing over
But he
there,
does like living in
so,
community.
so to be fair though, over there, they just renovated like a little while back. And it's actually probably a nicer facility than we have here. Well, not only office space, but also meeting space. Like, it's kind of deceiving, but downstairs is actually pretty spacious. And there's a lot of
I
meeting
get
space
that.
down there in the rec room over there. Yeah, I was there a couple weeks ago, and it was actually kind of amazing. So I imagine we want to keep that space in some way. I mean, there's a lot of open questions too. Like one thing that I've talked to Father Malini about is like RCIA. So I imagine we're gonna combine our CIAs and just work together.
Yeah.
That would make no sense. But like, where would we have it?
Well, they're so close
Right,
that it's
Right.
not gonna be a terrible hardship.
sure, but also too, like, I don't even know how they do RCIA over there. Like, we have a group of catechists that works out really well. Do they have the same? I don't know. Are we gonna use our catechists for their program? If it comes down to, let's say, like, these certain things we do, like, we have lunch and stuff for RCIA, like, for, sending right of election. Well, what budget does that come from? Those are kind of the more practical questions you need to ask, because they're up in the air right now.
But all the finances into it. Oh, no, so it's just
You
stuff.
cannot
That's
keep,
weird.
you cannot merge the finances of a parish. So we're two separate parishes, we're not merging.
So
Okay.
it won't be like a marriage. That,
No, no. The only difference between right now between what's happening over there and over here is that we're gonna be sharing priests. And we're gonna, I think the idea is we're gonna try and maybe do as much as possible with each other that we can. So like, there's no reason we couldn't have like 40 named societies work together.
I did go to mass there once,
Yeah,
like when you guys had COVID,
right.
that's when that
Yeah.
started. I went over there.
Yeah.
And I felt really welcome.
Yeah.
It's a great
Yeah,
parish.
oh,
I've been
sure,
there
sure,
before,
yeah.
you know, and they have their own ways of doing things,
Right.
and you know, I get that.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, what's really, I think the big issue we're gonna have to deal with probably coming up in October, November time will be the schools. And that's gonna be I think the biggest points of contention. Because I don't think no matter what we do, people are gonna be upset. Because
I mean, I thought it was kind of gonna stay the same. Both places. It's
Maybe.
Not.
maybe, well, all we know for sure is we're gonna have to keep both facilities open. Because we can't fit our kids over there or their kids over there. There's no room.
Maybe you could make middle school.
There's been different models thrown out, maybe like, you know, can we do something like K through 4 over there, 5 through 8 over here? Who do the bigs and the littles, maybe for, K through 1 and 7 and 8, and then keep
Yeah.
everyone else over here,
Except then you're gonna have people with kids in both groups,
right?
a family, you know, because you want everybody to have 5 kids.
Right,
so-
but also too, I mean, I think we're gonna run into that no matter what. So let's just say we keep pre-K through 2 over there. Well, of course, we're gonna have siblings over here,
Yeah,
5 through 8.
fifth grader over
Yeah,
here.
right, whatever. Right. So
People
no matter
that-
what, that's gonna happen.
People that public system about trying to have
Oh,
a
yeah.
middle school.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
grades.
Well, I mean, they do
So
that
you're
with the Holy
definitely not
Cross.
gonna have
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of all they have there.
K preschool through 8 at both. That's pretty much out.
That could be a possibility. I mean, there is a rationale to say, well, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
But then you have to have more teachers.
No, I mean,
No,
same no
because
teacher would
you've
apply. I mean, you
yeah.
already have teacher over there and over
You've
here,
got so many
right?
kids.
I mean, I think from the teacher standpoint, we're not gonna have to really get rid of any teachers because we're gonna need them regardless.
Yeah. You
The
got
question
great
is just what capacity. I mean, maybe you might have a 3rd grade teacher, you might have to teach 2nd grade or something, but I don't know. You know, I don't
It's
know.
not the job.
Right.
All right, I have a request.
Okay.
Keep Henry over here, whatever grade he's in. I guess he's going in 2nd.
I think so. I think that's probably right.
Yeah,
Um,
keep him.
Yeah, so regardless, next year, they're gonna be separate. So all through next year, it's gonna be the same. We're gonna see. The question is for the 2024-25 year. Because,
Does seem to be too much.
right, I don't know, and that's gonna be really kind of determined probably around December-ish, because we have to look at the contracts for January. And those have to be solidified before we go any further. So it's gonna be a big decision.
Maybe it'll be
Lots
better.
of them.
I think there's opportunities, right? I mean, so,
I say this with nobody in the school.
yeah, you're right, yeah. Well, I mean, I look at it this way too, like, I saw this at St. James the Greater when I was over there when the school. A lot of the parents were like, I don't want to drive down Hampton. It's like, we're going to drive your kid to high school eventually.
Eventually.
And so this is really just kind of getting
People
ready
like
for
to
that.
take it on the bus to high school. That's what I did.
Well, it depends. If you go to CBC, you could, I guess. But no,
If
If
no,
you go to
right,
the Burke,
yeah,
yeah, straight down
right,
here.
right,
And not beyond,
right.
beyond the fall and out driving.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, that's going to happen eventually anyway. So,
That was a heartbreak,
yeah.
real heartbreak.
So I don't know. I mean, there is arguments for all these things, and I think the we're gonna have to do what's best for the entire community. That's what it comes down to, right? Whatever that means. And I don't know what that means yet.
Yeah, and it is hard. There are still some very old ladies. And I say that advisedly, who walk to church. But it was particularly hard for our family because we had someone in class very beginning
Oh,
of school.
yeah,
My gram was in the second graduating class in 1906.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first graduating class was 4 boys. 1904.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I
but-
think these are all difficult. I mean, I was over to Immaculate Heart of Mary on Saturday night for they had the solemnity, and it's the last one as a parish. Because they're being submerged into, subserved into St. Stephen's. And, it's one of these things that's kind of bittersweet, but also I get it. I get it.
my
You know?
sister's carried St. John the Baptist.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yep, right. And St. Stephen's has a huge area, it's large.
well, Mary didn't think so because there are so many charities housed at St. John the Baptist. There's
Well,
so much going
Yeah,
on.
I do know
That's still
Father,
nice.
well, I do know Father Nord is planning to keep, at least maybe have one mass a week
Yeah.
at those places. Now, I don't know what mass it's gonna be, but, the church is still gonna remain, the parish is just.
Yeah.
But I mean, the problem with, I channel on Saturday night, it was air conditioning. wasn't working. And so, well, do you wanna put a bunch of money into this place to make air conditioning? If you're only gonna keep it up once a week, would be better just to close it? I don't know. That's gonna be a question for Father Nord.
Some of us are the school are
Yeah.
the
Fair,
church.
fair, maybe.
Well, that's why some of the old ones have big
Yeah.
windows.
Well, I mean, we all
and they open.
survived. It was fine, but I mean, okay, but it was uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, you weren't wearing a wool uniform.
I was wearing 5 layers of vestments. So yeah.
No, I mean as a
Oh,
kid.
it's yeah, right.
Mm.
But yeah,
Well,
so
well, that's something I've been working on through Lent, letting go of attachments.
Yep.
So you can't go to heaven with attachments,
that's right.
anything in that bracket.
Right.
And
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, like I say, these are going to be some interesting and difficult times, and it's gonna take some time. We're gonna have to implement these things over probably the next 3 or 4 years. And so, I don't know what my future is gonna be like there. I don't know if I'm gonna be here this entire time. I don't know.
Were you surprised that you were
No,
staying
I
here?
really wasn't. Because once I kind of saw the iterations they were making, I kind of realized like there was no way their father, Monsignor Chandler, and Father Mayo here, because they would not want to set up like winners. And so I knew a pastor would have to come in. And so in order to maintain continuity, I knew they had somebody here. So that was the only option.
Saw that.
Right, yeah. So yeah, I kind of figured that was coming. Now the only question I have now, that's why I want to talk to Father Mooney, because if it comes to that, he wants me to be truly the associate for both places. I want to spend the rest of my time speaking with Father Mayo to figure out what happens over at Rayfield. I mean, I know in general what they have over there, but like the inner workings, I really don't know. Like how they were in their school, how does that work? What are the past time? what's the office situation like over there, that kind of thing. So that's gonna be remain to be seen. That's probably, I don't know. And again, it depends on what Father Lee wants to do. So we'll see.
Well, I hope he likes the father.
Oh, I don't think he's opposed to that. The question is that will I have time for the
Yeah,
father?
that's right. We'll just have to follow you around asking.
Well, yeah, that's gonna be another factor too. Like my day off may change now. Depends on what Father Lee does. I don't know. He might want to take Monday off. If that's the case.
So
Might
you
take
have
my
Monday
day.
off? Oh,
Right now I have Monday off. Well, sure.
does it
technically.
matter to you? I mean, do you
No.
have a preference?
No, I mean, I want to. The reason I picked Monday is because usually at the time, and even now, that was probably the least packed my calendar was. So it just kind of fell that way. But no, I mean, if I change to some other day, that's fine too. I think the only day I probably couldn't do was Wednesday. But any other day of the week probably would have time.
But the children's masses will still be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Oh, you're not even sure of that. Okay,
All I know is,
have to get your own time.
all I know is this. There were people who talked to me about, like, why don't you come to our fair and discuss stuff? I want you to tell me. And I said, "Look, listen, yeah, I was thinking about going to the lab, and going to the trap. And I thought, I'm only doing that because I think I'm going to get a higher grade of things. But told me, the only thing I know I got to do is
Yeah.
And I left once.
Right.
Okay, I know what that was like. I know that it was pointless because I came back. So whatever you decide, I'll be or there,
Right.
wherever
Right.
wherever you guys are going to have mass, I will do that.
I think that's a good attitude, Mike. Just because, like, again, the only thing that matters, the priest says, "This is my body and this is my blood." As long as that happens,
I
we're
would like,
good.
I would like, I would like,
That's right.
yeah,
All
I
right.
would like the priests to stay, and I would like to continue to come at 86 like I've done. But if it changes, I will be ready to change it.
Yeah, and again, I think it's more temporary because I think there's gonna probably more reach out to the parish level and see.
Figure out what.
Right. I mean, I imagine that's probably what Father Millie's gonna do, but I don't. I mean, we already have a plan in place. For all I know. I'll see.
Whatever it is. So you just pray that
Yeah.
Scott, great
Yep.
thoughts about what you're doing.
I will say about Father Milley, as much as I'm going to miss Monsignor Schambuffer, I know Father Milley to be a very effective administrator and a very pastoral man. So he has a great knack for getting people to do things that he wants them to do, and have them thinking they make the decision on their own.
And also, like, I get attached to Monsignor Schambuffer because when this COVID thing hit and I started to come off and pastor now, this whole chapter. And the funny thing is, it's weird. Like I have a nostalgia
Yeah,
for
yeah,
when there was
Yeah.
trouble,
right.
and it was easy to come here, and nobody, like, not many people were, like, it was kind of like up front and center.
Yep.
with Monsignor Shamba for you, and Father Son or Monsignor Son.
Yeah.
So I mean, when he goes away, it's another sign. Somebody try to let I have to let go of it.
Yeah,
It's got to
Yeah,
go
no,
to this new place.
I think that's
Yeah.
that's kind of always the dilemma because you have an experience of a spiritual father, right? That's really been good, especially in times of great stress and struggle. And then it's like, okay, I got to go. And that's also an act of the Holy Spirit, right?
That's
Is being open to those things, saying, okay,
time
boy,
for the next-
I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust.
time for the next.
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah. I always love it.
What
Because
about-
depending on the translation, let go of me or don't touch me.
Yeah, no, touch me.
him we can hold on to.
One of the great things about thinking about how the Lord has been, throughout time, I am, and that He's close to you. All the people in the world saw Him at once.
Yeah.
In His mind, everything's happening all in one
Yep.
shot. It's all He's completely aware, all in one shot. There's nothing. But also, when I told you that all these things are etched in time, not that they're in my mind everything I've done is actually
Yeah, right.
my mind.
Right,
It's
right.
just all my deeds have happened in
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
space time.
Right.
One of the great things is that it makes it easier for me to let go of things. Hopefully, not everything because I'm human, right?
Sure.
But it makes it easier to let go of things because they're there.
Right.
And they always will be there the way they were.
Right.
And when, we go to heaven, we'll be able to see those things. Perhaps don't. I don't know if it would be so important, but
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways it will. I mean, obviously, when we're working with God in God's will with instruments in His hands, obviously that's going to be lasting. That's going to be tough, right? It's the things that we violate that.
that record's there.
But it is, but also too, like I say, that's one of the graces of the sacrament, is that He blots that out. Right.
I've been trying to, with daily rosaries, I've been trying to do reparation. And I would say the intention is that reparation of my sins and the sins of the community, those two things, distinct, because I'm part of the community, but also
right.
who is praying.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to repair all that stuff. I mean, there's no way, like this, they get through the narrow gate. No
Sure.
way I'm going to be able to repair all that stuff.
Sure.
But so I addressed that because it's in the record, right, so to speak. Right? But as far as I'm concerned, I don't know what else to do with it. So I just trust him. It's like I've done what I can.
Right, exactly.
There's only so much a guy can do. That
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other thing. I have to find myself when I turn to prayer, whether it be rosary or something else. Like, I know there's certain people I've said I would pray for, and I either forget or whatever. And the fact I recognize, I know there's something I'm missing. I leave up to God's hand because He knows, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the part of it.
There was an intention.
Yeah.
I've heard that,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I've heard that Mary will sort it out.
She's very busy.
Who needs more? I mean, I don't know. She might have known all along what kind of work she was putting herself into, but got big
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah. I mean, again,
No retirement for her.
what did Mary know? What did she not know? I mean, I think she definitely knew what would happen to her son. I think she knew, the sorrow, all those things that were going to happen.
Simeon.
Yeah.
Claims that.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously there had to be a free yes given by Mary, which means she had to know ahead of time.
Well, a friend and and she told me this many, many years ago. She's Jewish. And she said, when I meet someone and start to get to know them,
Like
for
you or
example,
she meet something. When she met something.
when she meets
Okay.
someone, because what I think is, would they hide me?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, well, as a little Catholic girl, that's what you think too. And so I had a lot of time to pray and listen to prayer and think and sleep in the last few weeks. And I started thinking, would I? Because you always want to, of course I would. I would have been a plumber. I would have become a plumber like that Christian woman who put a big ferocious dog in her van
Yeah.
and carried out, baskets full of babies. And the dog would scare away the police.
Yeah.
If they came around, they didn't want to mess with that dog, and it would cover up the noise of the babies too. So, and I think, well, yeah, I would have done that. But then I thought, and the same with other things. Would I have let them peel all my skin off? Be a martyr?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty cowardly. And so I was thinking, does God know me? To know what I would have done in the past and what I would have done in the Holocaust and
Yeah.
what I would have done.
So here's the thing, right? God gives us the grace to overcome the circumstances, but we have to choose to work with that grace.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you would hope that through this life of grace, meaning I'm trying to do your will, I'm trying to follow what you want. that prepares us in a way for these things to occur, right? But yeah, I mean, that's great. That's
I
a good
mean, would
question.
I have followed the cross?
But to be fair though, we have to look at also too, like there's a big difference between moral virtue and heroic virtue.
Yeah,
Now,
okay.
moral virtues we have to do it. That's obligatory, right? Heroic virtue though is above and beyond. That's really what the stuff of like canonized saints. And it's not to say that people who don't uphold moral virtue are not saints. It just means to be canonized in the church, they have to show some heroic virtue, right, to be considered. And so, I think from a moral standpoint, there's a big difference between, boy, I'm going to do everything that I can to save a life, compared to something that, let's say, I don't know, Saint Gianna Molla did, right? So Saint Gianna, of course, she was a mother. She was a doctor. She basically gave up her life for her unborn child. Now, she didn't have to. She was morally justified to get surgery to help her to overcome that, which could have cost the life of the child. But that's also why she's a saint.
Yeah.
She chose otherwise. She would still probably been a saint, even if she chose the other option. But she
Yeah.
chose that.
And then you've got, with that kind of dilemma, you have 4 kids at home.
Right. Right.
You
So
know,
so again, I mean, I think
depriving
but
children of a parent.
I think God does put the situation to give us the grace to overcome these things. But again, we have to choose to receive it and use it.
Well, that made me think, because I'm saying a lot of rosaries and things, and trying to keep the mysteries. I like looking at the paintings and all,
Yeah, sure.
listening to the rosary on here. But I just didn't want to fool with the phone, and I was doing the joyful mysteries, and I pictured myself going with Mary on the 9-day trip through the desert, taking care of Mary, being
Sure.
with Mary,
Yeah.
sweeping the floors at Elizabeth's house while they took care of one another. And I thought, that's a way of like following the way of the cross as a follower.
Yeah.
And it just gave me a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, that's a form of contemplative prayer, sure. I mean, one of the things on the spiritual exercises is we kind of go through the life of Jesus and kind of picture yourself where you are there. And I recall there was the one of the meditations was on the infancy narrative where Mary and Joseph are coming to Bethlehem and coming to the inn. And what was interesting was I saw myself there as the stable man, the manger man, right? So it was my job to check in on them, make sure they're okay. What was funny is like during the course of those next few weeks, that relationship grew with the Holy Family as one of I even like moved in with the Nazareth.
Oh, I love that.
So I mean that's one of the things that's really kind of amazing about Ignatian prayer is coming to that retreat. I never thought I could be contemplative, right? But it does allow you to do that, right? And
Well,
you're
I
kind of
pictured
surprised.
myself as the wife of a shepherd who brought food. And
Yeah.
then I decided, I'm going to.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, good. Yeah, I think you started making connections kind of funny too. Like you make connections like other points of the scripture. Like one thing there was the contemplation of the parable of the Good Samaritan. And what's funny is you kind of like imagine yourself going back to where I was at that inn, and I was with Jesus was there experiencing that with me. Actually, it was a true story. And so, I mean, it's kind of interesting to kind of go back and you see kind of how these connections work in Scripture and how God works in your prayer life to make you present in the moment. Talk again about that presence, right? This eternal aspect, you're always there. And, it's kind of an interesting scenario.
Yeah. And what I decided was I might not have been that plumber, our Schindler. But I want to get myself at the end
Yeah.
to be that person,
Sure, right,
to change
sure.
that
And that's what I'm saying. I don't think you really
in
know.
my
I don't
spirit.
think you would really know what you do in those circumstances until you actually put in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would trust that we would have the moral certitude to do what God wants us to do the right things in those circumstances. But yeah, I mean, circumstances matter.
Yeah,
Right.
I kind of really like myself, putting myself in, proximity.
Yeah.
I guess.
No, I think it's good to go through those kind of exercises. I mean, we always in moral theology or ethics, we always talk about these different circumstances, right? So, reflecting on the new commandment, we had a discussion about in morals about this classic dilemma of let's say you were in 1942 France and you had Jewish neighbors and you were hiding the neighbors in your basement or in your crawl space, and the Gestapo came to your door and said, "You have Jews here. What do you do?" Because it'll be immoral to lie, but it's also immoral to give them up.
And you have children,
Right.
because
And
you're giving everybody up.
right. And so the moral thing to do would be to pray and then use the wit, the intellect that God gave
Uh-huh.
you to potentially deceive.
Well, I don't know.
It's not only that, is why would I have Jews here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why well yeah, so there's ways you can use your intellect
Oh,
and your
yeah.
wit to get out of those circumstances, which also means you could deceive, not lie, but deceive, right? And so there's a difference in kind between those two.
I think we've been tested this.
Yeah, it could be.
So I think there's signs about what we would have done in very recent times.
Yeah. Sure. Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I think the pandemic exposed a lot
Yes.
was, these different these kind of dichotomies we have in society. Right? Who we believe, who we trust.
Who do you trust?
Is it good to question certain aspects? Yeah.
Yes.
I think also it kind of reveals certain fallacies. And I think that kind of the discussion we were having earlier, it was interesting. I think I was kind of considered an expert by field when I was an engineer. I'm a bit expert now. But also too, I also recognized I wasn't knowledgeable of everything. Right. And so when I was given an opinion, it was just that, an opinion. I didn't say that was ever like fact. I was saying, well, here's what I would do and here's why. Here's how I can show it's good. But you would never assert something. The other difference too is I would never put anything in writing until I was sure too.
Well, that's the whole idea behind factor and safety.
Well, exactly. Right.
Well, and now that's the way architects and engineers seal drawings. We think this is about right.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean,
And they don't put
anything
their neck
I
down.
put in writing, I had to show good mathematics, and I could do that.
Yeah.
But when I'm on the airplane, and that's why I was very careful about giving an opinion and making sure, like insertion, because if we were on the airplane and say, okay, we screw up this whole pattern, and now it's like 3 inches off. What do we do? I said, so I was like, well, we have these options we can do. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know yet. I'm going to look at it and figure it out. Right. I never gave solutions on the fly. Because once I start doing something, exactly right.
Yeah.
If I found something, oh, that's not going to work. Because what typically would happen was the shop, they wanted to get things done now.
No, that's it.
And so if I told them, I'm looking at this, okay.
Yeah.
We're just going to go over here and maybe do something.
We're going to get ahead of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was
They could
in the
make it work,
construction meetings when they were planning Rivers Edge 3 at the zoo.
Yeah.
And the calculations were for the glass in the hippopotamus
Yeah.
exhibit. And should they use SeaWorld calculations or not? But our display needed to provide for strength if a hippo hit with all
Sure.
four.
Yeah.
Well, they hemmed and hawed until jerk I worked for, Dick McGuire. You know anybody who's ever flooded with that thing, call on me. He just decided, well, we'll just go with their deletions. And that's what they did. And
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the cost effective decision hands out. They went through that now, right? I mean, so yeah, I don't know how many times I dealt with that in production where it's like, you need an answer now. Well, I don't have an answer for you now. That's not my job to give you an answer now. My job is to do what's best for the
Right.
airplane, right?
That's
So
fascinating.
we're gonna do that. And
You get due
because
diligence.
here's the thing, my job was always screw ups. And so what I could fall back on is like, look, I didn't do it. I'm trying to help you. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
It was
So
time to hit.
exactly. Right. So give me a minute. Right. I actually got a reputation on the shop floor as being what was the word, difficult?
really,
But I
it's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
to be.
I mean, it was kind of fun. What was kind of funny is they got a shop manager come to your desk and you just like make them wait for a few minutes while you're doing something else. And then, what can I do for you? I need an answer for this. You'll get it. When? By the end of the day. I can tell you that much right
Now, you're often talking about, now let's do this in the most charitable way.
now. And that's just what I did. So here's usually what happened. I've been working on something else. And see, here's the other thing I have to understand.
You're an engineer.
That first. But second, I was coming from a background in a place that worked efficiently. So I was trained on the 737 airplane line. They would pump, at the time when I was working there, they were doing 5 airplanes a day. That's how they were actually running off the line, 5 airplanes a day, because the demand was that high. But it was down to a science, the way they had everything. And so I was working with people who there was nothing they hadn't seen. And so they could tell me very easily, here's how you do this, here's what you do, so I can get out in 5 minutes. When I moved to the 787 line, that was the complete opposite. It was all chaos.
I'm
And
gonna see
so,
if I got a light booked on the 7.
well, there, the thing about 737, you had experienced people from even the shop who probably knew what you were going to do before you did. And even though they wouldn't touch it until you gave them the go ahead, they knew for sure, right? And they were usually right. The 787 line was completely different. And so you had people, good people, but their background wasn't in aerospace. They were doing something else last week, maybe working at Walmart or at McDonald's. And now they're putting together a multi-million-dollar airplane for people that fly on, right? And so not only that, but it was different materials, different processes, different design, and even different manufacturers that you were dealing with that you didn't have before. So maybe put it this way. The job I had in Charleston was we put together the midsections of the 787. So where the wing joins the fuselage, pretty important part, pretty highly loaded area, right? The wing box was made by the Japanese. The top part was made by the Italians. And the front section was made by another Japanese company. And the aft section was also made by the Italians. So we're trying to be these 5 massive parts together, right? 4 massive parts together. And it should all fit like a puzzle. Well, what you have is, it doesn't fit out like a puzzle because you have 5 different manufacturers building these things. They're using different tools, using different methods. And what happened is you have these problems.
Well, you know, they always say like, well, we're not gonna come in with the mold here, that's, you know,
Oh.
on your side, you're like, well, you know, that's for them, it's not in contract, but you know, they'll come in with the mold.
Well,
Then they don't come into.
What was that thing? It was also like one of these things where like there was no like oversight. So the whole point was we're trying to do this. We're trying to farm out this work so it's cheaper for us in the long run. But then we're going to assume it's all going to come together. It was evident that program was designed by finance people, not engineers. And lo and behold, what happens like, hey, this doesn't fit. What do we do now?
All the parts.
Right. And so that's when we got involved. Okay,
Bring out the drills.
right.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do here.
Whoa,
Right.
whoa, whoa, with the drills. Wait until March.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it was for, I'd say 4 years. Yeah. Yeah. Every day. Right. So you had to take the time to
So
say,
Drove you to the priesthood.
actually, by the time I left the priesthood, I actually was in a very good position. At that point, I trained all the engineers down in Charleston in the final assembly plant they built down there. So Boeing came in and bought all these areas. And but before that, we were supporting this partner. Boeing came in and bought it. They built a new final assembly building. And my responsibility changed, become a lead engineer. So my job was to train and be the technical expert of all this stuff that's going on. Because at that point, you saw pretty much everything you could possibly see after 4 years, which probably was good.
So now it's time for the 797.
Well, yeah, not anymore. I think that's supposed to be the Max, but then the Max kind of. So yeah, it was a very fulfilling job. It was a challenging job, and I appreciated it. But there was definitely something missing in my life, which is why I came. But I came to the priesthood and started serving in a very good place, right? So
Sometimes that's
how it should happen.
you're not running.
Exactly, because if we're anything different, that'd been a problem. Right.
Why are you going there to visit and solve your life?
Exactly.
Why are you going there
Right.
because that's what you want?
The priesthood is a gift. It's not a escape. Right. And so that's why it took me so long to discern, because it looks like I'm doing well here. And it seems like you want me to change that. Is that right? It's kind of funny. We had
I mean, it's very satisfying to have a career on the roll.
well, sure, but it kind of reminds me. This last few days, we've been reading from the book of Judges in our office readings, and the Gideon. So Gideon's fleece. You guys know about Gideon's fleece. So what was interesting about Gideon is how much he was testing God, right? And I think it kind of makes sense, because what God was asking Gideon to do was actually pretty brutal and actually kind of a big job. He was asking Gideon to defend Israel from these Midians who were overpowering the Israelites. And so if God comes to you and says, hey, look, I want you to lead Israel against this superior force, are you sure? Okay, look, I'm gonna put this fleece here. And if it's wet tomorrow, I'll know that's from you. Okay, it's wet. All right, look, I'm gonna try this again. I'm gonna put this fleece here, and I want the fleece to be dry and everything else to be dry. The fleece to be dry and everything else to be wet. Okay. Well, that way, are you really all right? Now you want me to go with how many people? Are you sure? And so I think it's interesting how Gideon discerned that. He was using his intellect to try to determine if this actually was of God or not. But eventually had to make a choice. And if there's that many things that line up to say, yeah, this is me, you can't help me like, okay, I guess I gotta do this. Right. I think it was the same thing with me concerning the priest.
What would be the difference between that testing and disability testing?
Yeah.
You're trying to verify, because you have to verify, otherwise you take everything about.
Right.
But,
Right.
and with Zechariah, John's father.
Yeah. Zechariah. Yeah.
What's the difference there?
Yeah. Well, I think that comes to the fact that in the way that God came to them. So we're told in Judges that God came to Gideon. Now, how that happened doesn't really say. Does that mean through prayer? Does that mean like he actually appeared? He didn't actually appear to him unless he was dead, right?
Yes.
So it has to be some way that he discerned that this was actually of God. With Zechariah, it was the angel Gabriel that appeared before him,
Okay, so,
right? And I think it also comes down to the purpose of the question, right? So, in other words, for Gideon, I think it's somewhat understandable. Well, hey, this has never happened before, where you want me this really lowly person, this really obscure tribe. He even says to the guys, like, we're the meanest, right? Which also probably is a good indication why God wanted him. I need a mean man for this.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. So
We need a hammer.
we need a hammer, right? So we need a hammer for this. But with Zechariah, God only demonstrated at that point that he did do these things. So it wasn't rare. Well, I mean, it was rare, but it wasn't impossible. And there's also evidence in Old Scripture that God brought about a child from a barren couple, and even an older barren couple, going all the way back to Abraham. So when Zechariah doubted,
Yeah.
he's doubting something that's already evident.
Like we know that.
Yeah, exactly. With Gideon, I don't know about this one. Are you sure? You know, let's test this to see, right? So I think there's a difference in kind between those two.
But then going back to you,
I think it just took a while for me to figure out what actually God wanted, and so, and also too, I wasn't actually discerning for part of that. So, like for instance, how God works in those steps. So the first step for me was Bishop Bryce's consecration, and that first retreat I went. So the first retreat I went on was back in, I guess it was 2011. It was 2010. That's 2011. And I left that retreat not really discerning the priesthood, but also recognizing I needed something in my life to fulfill something that was missing. And so that really drove me down a path of not necessarily just trying to be a priest or discerning, that was just trying to be a better man. And part of that was through a regular confession and regular spiritual direction, which was incredibly helpful. It wasn't until a year later when I went back on the same retreat, so this was 2012, that I kind of realized, like, oh, maybe there's something here. I don't know what it is, but there's something here. Right? Before 7. And that was kind of a long sermon of I was going to daily mass. I was praying the breviary. I was kind of focusing on my own personal prayer and trying to listen to what God wanted for me. And it was very just kind of, there wasn't like an evident direction either way, because I was probably in the most successful position I've ever been in my life. And also at that point I was also, our relationship ended, but I was dating somebody when I first started that discernment.
And did you think possibly that was your calling, to be a family man?
Oh yeah, since I left high school, I kind of thought, when I went to Raleigh, I thought that was my plan. I was going to be called to be a husband and father. Dating in Raleigh was very difficult just because there's not many women, as your daughter probably will know. So it was, I didn't really date much in college. I think this probably should be my first indication. My first date in college, I didn't even know it was a date.
Yeah.
So I went. There was a guy. I was in a fraternity. This couple and one of my fraternity brothers and this other good woman were dating. They're getting close to graduation. They graduated and decided to separate. No. And I mean, that's the other thing. If I would have contacted them first.
Yeah,
obviously, but I didn't know.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. So it was, but I mean, that's kind of the funny thing. After I graduated, I got a job out of not directly out of college. That's a few months. Got a part-time job. Then I got a job at in Illinois working in Freeburg for this company that makes fuse boxes, Hubble Wigman. And I worked there for about 6 months. And it was funny, when I first started the job, I think it was in May. I got a call in October from Boeing. Now, when I was looking for a job right out of college, I was applying everywhere and anywhere, anything I could find, right? And so Boeing called around October, and they set up an interview, and then they set up another interview, and for 2 separate jobs, and I got both offers. But I went back to my boss here in Illinois, and I said, "Look, here's the offers they gave me. Can you at least match this?" Because I didn't want to leave St. Louis. That was my home. I didn't really want to leave, but also I wasn't crazy enough to stick around. Take the, it was $15,000 more they were being paid now. So you know, whatever. Yeah, I
That
mean,
does not take a lot of discernment.
well, I mean, the other thing to consider was like hustling up there compared here, whatever. And so that first year I was trying, I mean, I was living paycheck to paycheck because of rent and everything else. But I'm happy I did it. And, you know, because the boss here said no. Up there, I didn't really date much either because I was mostly working. It wasn't until I got to Charleston I started dating a little more. And I had some really good relationships. I had some really bad ones. And when I was discerning, when I came back to discerning the priesthood, I was in a really good one. And probably I would say I loved her. Um, yeah, that's probably true. But like we never actually got to the point where we said it to each other. But it was like we were dating for maybe 6 months. And the weird thing about that, we were in a long distance thing. So she was getting her doctorate in Kirksville, and I was down in Charleston. And to top it all off, she was actually a friend of my sister's. So the weird thing was like whenever I was in town, and she was over. Like I would always stay at my parents, and she would like spend the night over at my parents' house. But it was like, well, what capacity are you here? Or here's my like girlfriend or my sister's friend. I mean, because it's kind of like odd that you're here, but also like, okay, you know, I don't. It was kind of awkward. So we got to the point where it just kind of became, yeah, this is kind of too much. I think. And at that point, I was starting to discern the priesthood at that point, and so I was like, yeah, maybe this is what God's calling. Right? But even that was not that was not the final decision.
Yeah.
And so it took about 3 more months for me to figure it out.
When did you actually know?
Well, I knew. So it was probably when I got back here to St. Louis. I left Charleston in 2013. I moved into the Colby house here in St. Louis. Or let's take a step back. It was basically that spring. I was at mass. I can't remember which mass it was. It was during Easter time though. And I was kneeling down before mass just saying like, Lord, I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what you're trying to tell me, but it seems you're calling me to this, but also like there's things happening here which is keeping me here, I think. I don't know. And so just give me a sign. And you're right. Yeah, just make this fleece wet. And the gospel, the gospel was from John 21, 15 through 17. And the gospel passage is after the resurrection. Peter's walking with Jesus, and Jesus asked Peter, "You love me?" And Peter says, "Yeah, I love you." So we'll go tend my sheep, feed my lamb. And so at that point, I was like, okay. So I knew I at least had to go try the seminary. And my rationale was, okay, look, if I go there and I find out that God is calling me to this, well, good. And if I go there and I find out God's not calling me to this, well, good. It was a win-win based on that, right? So, okay, it seems like this is what we do. I'm going to go try to figure this out. And my thought was too off. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, if it fails, I can come back here. I can go back, whatever. Should be. I contact Father Martin at who was the vocational director at the time. Said, look, Father, I think I'm being called to this. I already have an application. I'm going to finish this up and send it to you and send it. Okay, fine. So that summer, I finish up the application, send it in. He says, okay, look, I think we can set up something for you that why don't you move back here in January, and I can put you up in this place called the Colby House. This place of sermon. It's really for guys who are maybe like trying to pay off some debt, but you don't have any debt. So why don't you just come live here and with the community? They get used to living community, praying with guys, kind of thing. I said, okay. So this was like September. So like the next day, it was a week later, I went up to my boss and said, look, now you've been letting me go to like daily mass and doing all this stuff. Like, oh yeah, because she was Catholic too. And so I didn't tell you this. I haven't really told anybody, but I'm really been discerning the priesthood for like the last year or so. And I think you're gonna have to find a new engineer in December. And her response was, okay, well that's great. And then she said, well, what if we gave you a promotion?
That always happens.
I know.
No.
And I said, well, if you want to put me up a grade or whatever, that's fine. I'm not going to oppose that, but I'm at least going to go try this. She said, well, we'll try to do that just because if you come back, we'll have you in a better position. Like, okay, cool, whatever. But at that point, I was like, whatever, I'm going to do this regardless. So I go back to St. Louis, move to the Columbia House. So I lived there with Father Martin and these other two guys who I met at the retreats. But they're also priests now, Father Chris Smith and Father Chris Ruby. You guys watching? Hi. They're also my fraternity group. They're good men. So we went through the Columbia House together. Father Ruby and I entered at the same time. Father Smith entered after the year after us. So we're in seminary together, basically. And what was kind of fascinating about this is that every time there was like kind of a crossroads in my discernment, that gospel always popped up. John 21, 15, 17. One point was like right after my first year, we have a summer open, so you could go work if you wanted to or whatever. And so you didn't really have to, have any particular ministry or apostolic. It was just after that first year for us who were coming to the pre-theology, it's open year, it's open summer, so whatever you want to do. Well, in March, some of the guys from Boeing contacted us like, hey, why don't you come here and be a contractor for the summer? Now, for those who don't know, making a contractor, you make
Oh, yeah.
good money. And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, maybe. But I went to my spiritual director. I said, Father, this opportunity has kind of come up. What do you think? And his response was, well, Mark, I don't know if you should put your hand in the plow and look back. Okay. So I turned that down.
But I could enter the seminary with a car.
I already had a car. I mean, the thing is, last thing, I didn't have any debt. I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, tell you the truth, I had a pretty good nest egg built up at that point. And so it was like, I don't need it. And it's like, well, that could be a temptation away from where you are now. I was like, okay. So I did. And I'm really happy I did. But again, there's these moments where even like in seminary, you study Greek. And I learned more about that passage in John that, it was the translation between meanings. They use the word love in English, but actually there's two different loves that Jesus and Peter are talking about. And I didn't know that until I read this. And also just like
and Peter wasn't answering.
He wasn't. He would, Philip, agape
Yeah, you're a buddy.
agape Philip, right. And so, but even then, like this kind of like humbling even further Jesus kind of go where Peter was and meet him there and kind of elevate. That always kind of stuck with me too. And every time, like I said, every time there was kind of a crossroads in my discernment, whether it's like, well, maybe I should look elsewhere, and maybe I'm being called this. That gospel popped up every single time. And so, to the point where my diaconate year, we went to the Holy Land for a retreat, and on the Holy Land retreat, there was opportunities for us as deacons to preach in these different spots, right? And one of the places was Peter's privacy, this place where Jesus said he loved me. And me being the senior statesman, I was like, I'll let my younger brothers take these. I mean, that's that'd be a great thrill for them. But I don't really need to have that opportunity. Well, the sheet came back and all the spots were filled except for Peter's privacy. And so, of course, I signed up for it, and I was able to preach at that spot where I first heard the call, please come to the seminary. And now the call becomes a priest. So, and even now in my priesthood, it's so funny how that gospel comes up at certain points. And I think that's how God speaks to us.
I would tell you that when I was a teenager, I had a lot of trouble. And I started to kind of fall away from the faith. Got a lot of rejection. And then I got in trouble and got thrown out of school. For whatever reason, I connected to this one piece of scripture. It says, the stone that the builders rejected has become this cornerstone. It's wonderful in the eyes of God. And that's, and it's like in several places in the Bible. It's not just one place, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to get connected with some black religion yet right now, but I really need this, and it really was like when the ship falls apart, you hold on to this piece. And whenever I hear that, I remember how, I was completely lost.
Yeah.
And that, The funny thing is, was even going in that architecture school, that cornerstone part,
Yeah.
like different parts of that become relevant, and so I mean, like, yeah, it comes and connects.
Yeah, and
you
I think
also.
there's something about that too. Like, I mean, even like for me in college, you think like a lot of people go to college and they kind of maybe lose their faith in some ways, just kind of walk away from it. But to me, in the midst of all like the craziness of like your first time being away and like living alone and whatever, what gave me a lot of solace was the fact that there was a Catholic church and they had mass. And I went to mass there. The first time I went to mass at St. Pat's down in Rolla, I was like, oh, oh God, this is familiar. Oh, I know. Okay, I know where I am now. Right? Yeah. And I think that's what got me all the way through college.
Yeah.
Was just this kind of like constant. I was like, okay, I know whatever crazies happen here. I know here
It's
gonna
always
be
gonna be
fine.
the same.
Exactly. And that just sustained me.
When
But I
you
think
went
that
to
started.
mass,
I think it started
when-
with my parents, though. They instilled that so deeply that it's amazing how that kind of just comes out.
Yeah.
So,
which
sorry.
mass was it? Was it the Latin mass when you mentioned that it was the anniversary of the cornerstone?
No, that was
Yeah.
Sunday.
Oh,
So
okay.
this past Sunday, my Sunday homily. So this past Sunday was the actual blessing and laying of the cornerstone of the church.
How many years?
It was June 18th, 1950.
What did you think? And then there's this huge
Oh yeah,
clap
that
of
was yeah,
thunder,
that was funny.
and everybody.
That was hilarious. So yeah, at the 5:30 mass, I start my homily. I start saying, well, we celebrate the actual. I said the dedication, but it's like actually not the dedication, but the blessing and the founding of the cornerstone, June 18th, 1950. So it's like,
I mean,
I don't know, that's no
wasn't
man.
outside thunder. It was thunder in the
Yeah, yeah, that just to accentuate the.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
it was kind
Like,
of crazy.
don't be messing with this church.
right.
You can merge,
That's
but
right.
you're not
Yeah.
with this church.
Oh,
It was like when there's clap of thunder and lightning and it turns black on Good Friday
Yep.
at 3 o'clock.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
that was beautiful.
yeah, that always happens. But
So, yeah,
I was having the same thing during Lent when there was so much talk about follow me,
Yeah,
hate your family.
Right.
Because I was giving up a building that I literally wished
Yeah.
into being.
yeah.
And it was attachments. Well, then I listened to one lecture and it said, as what purgatory is about, getting rid of those attachments. That's
You have
maybe
to-
where I'll have to say
You're
goodbye
gonna,
to my
yep,
pets.
you're gonna have to do it eventually, right? You have to do it eventually.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
and that's part of the purification.
right.
So I'm getting rid of that building
Good.
for not too much money, unfortunately, but I'm still holding out.
All right.
We're appealing to St. Francis on the pets.
Okay.
I've talked it over with Gracie. She's got her own rosary collection. My animals,
Yeah.
I believe, should be Catholic too. And rosary and Gracie tends to steal rosaries. And I
Well,
tend not to crawl under furniture dusting anymore.
When she starts praying them in Latin, let me know, and I'll.
Well, she thinks in Latin, because that's the,
Cat life.
yeah, whatever language St. Francis spoke in, we're appealing. to
Well, he
him.
spoke Italian. He was Italian.
Oh, I know an Italian teacher.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
I'll take Gracie
Wonderful. Wonderful.
or Lorenzo. But, oh, this has been great.
Good.
Brought some good stuff.
Good.
Thank you.
My pleasure. In that case, we'll see everyone next week, not sooner.
Don't say that.
Well, actually, actually no, we won't see each other next week because next week we have Totus Tuus. So I'll
Exactly
be.
is that again?
So it's a youth ministry a camp type style for like middle schoolers, but also they have an evening program for high schoolers. So I'll be over there with them on that Tuesday night. See you, Jane. Thanks for coming. So next week we will not meet, but we'll regain. Then the week after is July 4th. So we won't meet on that night either.
It's a little high.
Yeah. So we'll reconvene on the 11th.
Oh, boy, I'm gonna have more than one
Perfect.
list.
Okay. Well, we'll reconvene on the 11th for Friends, Food, and Faith, which will be a topic. So if you have any ideas for a topic you want to discuss, let me know, and then we'll talk about that.
Well, the Cheez-Its looked good, but I didn't know if I had any disease. I thought I had a cold, so
Oh,
I didn't
fair,
want to put my hand in.
Okay.
it,
Well, you can pour it next time. We have plates to talk to pour it. So yeah, we'll do that on the 11th. So we'll take a 2-week hiatus and we'll see you back then.
Very
All right.
good.
Thanks for coming. See you guys later.
Okay. And I'm gonna